You're never going to be able to feel your best mentally if you don't take care of yourself physically. When I was overcoming burnout and depression in 2020, I tried everything to get better. It was my rock bottom. I had just got fired from my tech sales job. I had really been in a tailspin for about 4 years. I was drinking more. I was doing more drugs. I wasn't waking up early every morning to go hit the gym. I wasn't eating super well. I had been burnt out for a while. I never thought that mental health would ever apply to me. Not that I resisted it or not that I denied it, it just wasn't ever on my radar. And so when I was in this state for a period of a couple of years, it was so unlike me. It felt like I was so disconnected from who I was. And after I got fired, I was really looking to pick up the pieces and get back on track. Ultimately, the biggest thing I learned, I heard this idea that everything in life is neutral. Our mind creates meaning, good or bad. And I'm sure you've heard that before, but it blew my mind when I heard it. It hit me at the right time, at the right moment when I heard it in 2020. And my biggest takeaway was, holy crap, it's me. And my mind needed work. And while I didn't know how to do that quite yet, I now had a North Star. I now knew that I got to work on my mind. I got to figure this stuff out. What I did know, I had decades of physical health and well-being, growing up playing competitive sports. And I knew that who I wanted to be was somebody who had all that dialed in. And so I knew at least, hey, if I can start working on this stuff, it's going to give me a better chance to just start to feel a little bit better. As I started testing and tinkering and trying everything, all the biohacking crap and some of the stuff that worked really, really well, there were 5 simple life-changing habits that I started implementing within a really short period of time and got me from this state of really hard, like almost impossible to get out of bed in the morning, to fired up, growing my first business, getting up at 5 a.m. every morning. I want to be super clear. These habits are not a replacement for doing the deep work, working with a professional and doing the mental and emotional processing and understanding and deep healing, shadow work, inner child, all of that stuff that is really, really needed to heal. These are simply meant to complement that work. This is a way of, you hear the phrase like preparing your vessel, right? Really dialing in your physical, like your vehicle that you're riding around in every single day. Because again, my philosophy is you're never going to feel and perform your best mentally if you don't take care of yourself physically. So some of the things I was noticing: low energy, low drive, big lack of motivation, tons of doubt, tons of negative self-talk. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I had a really hard time doing the things that I said I was going to do. So if any of those resonate, okay, just know like you're in the right spot, because these are the things that help me. But to realize also, no one ever gets off track by accident. It doesn't just happen. We behave our way off track. And just like we want to build momentum and like a snowball going downhill with these positive habits, the same thing works in the other direction. And I knew that. And so I understood that, hey, in order to get back on track, I got to start super, super small. And what I found with these 5 habits is almost immediately I improved my mental clarity, my emotional stability, right? That was more regulated day to day. I had this increased sense of presence. It was just where I was more and more. I started to be more comfortable in my own skin. I just started to just feel better, overall well-being. I started to have a little bit more positive outlook on life, started to look more at possibilities than all the things that were going wrong. I started to just have more focus and energy while I was working on my business. I could really feel that my performance was starting to elevate. So really think that these 5 habits are going to help you with that. Let's jump in. Number 1, start the day with cold exposure, with a cold shower. This was something that I had, when I first started to understand, I was dealing with depression, just feeling really low energy. I just read somewhere that it was like entrepreneurs take cold showers, probably just something on Instagram. And at the time I was like, okay, that's kind of dumb, but I got to try anything. I was like, I am in a mode of totally open mind, curiosity. I will try anything that comes across my plate. So I said, I'm going to commit moving forward. I lived in a basement room in San Francisco. We had this like janky little stand up tub with a 360-degree curtain that was just always on your body. The shower head was like shoulder high. I'm 6'2", so not even crazy tall, but it was built 100 years ago. So I'm bending down, and it wasn't super fun. And I knew the water was going to be really cold. So I started that every single day. And quickly, within just 2 or 3 days, it became like an ultimate cheat code. First day was really tough. And then I learned, hey, I actually got to focus on my breathing. And I started just focusing on 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And the second day sucked a little less. The third day, I was like, okay, it's cold, but I'm looking forward to it because I know how I'm going to feel when I get out. And I would get out of that shower feeling like I was shot out of a cannon. Like so much mental clarity, so much just focus, and like I was ready to take on the world, which was exactly what I needed because I hadn't had that for a few years. And I would say, look, just start with 30 seconds. And if you do 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out breathing, that's 3 breaths that you have to do. So I would just set up a timer next to the shower, actually do a countdown, because there's something psychologically that happens when we count down before we do, like we'll just naturally be inclined to start that thing. So I set the timer for 10 seconds. So I got 3, 2, 1, and I would find myself jumping in. Okay. Cold plunge also works if you have access to, a cold plunge. The idea is just to shock your body, shock your nervous system, and bring more alertness and focus to yourself. Number 2, strength training. Okay. I did start running a little bit as well, and I found that to be helpful, but more impactful was strength training. It just helped me feel stronger. It released endorphins, so I'd start to feel good, and it just helped build confidence over time. And this is something I had been doing for almost 15 years playing sports, but I had gotten away from it. But what it started to do, because I started to just be more intentional with it, I started to pay attention more, and it got me out of my head and into my body. So I started to find workouts that were really challenging, not just in terms of weight, but in terms of skills. Got more into things like jump rope and handstand walks and kettlebells and swings and all types of different things to really stimulate my mind, but in a way that forces me to be present with my body. And the number one thing, I think the biggest mistake that I see is when people try and strength train, they'll do it without any programming. They won't follow a program, meaning like, hey, I have a plan going into today. These are the things I'm going to train, and there's a reason behind it. And so I've always, the last few years, I've always had a program that I've paid for, so I can just show up, takes the guesswork out of it. I just show up and execute. And what I found is by following a program, it gave me something to look forward to, but I started to see more progress because I would be recording my reps. I'd be recording the weight. I'd be working on a particular skill, and each day I was working on, I was just getting better and better. Okay, so strength training is number 2. And guys, really quickly, I dropped a link to a free perfect morning routine guide that I dropped in the description. Really straightforward, something you can start tomorrow to just have more energy, focus, clarity, and start your day off on the right track and on the right foot, and not be distracted by things like emails, Slack, social media, all the things that most of us just tend to reach towards right away when we wake up. So click on that link, download it, get started immediately. There's also a cool little habit tracker in there so you can record your scores for the next 30 days. Okay, number 3, cut out alcohol. Cutting out alcohol has been the best thing I've done in my life. I started drinking when I was 16. I had my last drink 2 years ago when I was 33. The best thing I've done for my health, my recovery, my sleep, right? My strength training, my business. I'm way more motivated. I'm way more focused. I have more drive, more energy, more clarity than I ever had before. Even when I was kind of in that sober, curious state, I guess people call that, when I was like trying to cut back, see if it was for me or not. I'd go a month, 2, 3 months without it, and then I'd have some drinks again. It's been the best thing I've done for my relationships. I've formed new relationships. I've made circles of friends that also don't drink. I've realized there's so much to life, like outside of bar culture and drinking culture, that I never thought was there because I was so involved in it. Again, the big takeaway is improve my sleep. I used to never, ever, ever be able to sleep through the night. I would have fluctuations in my mood from feeling motivated and clear and driven. Then when I would drink, I would feel anxious, for not just Sunday scaries, but 3, 4, 5 days afterwards. One of the biggest things is I wear this Whoop, and what Whoop told me was when I drink even small amounts, it would take me 3, 4, 5 days to get back to my baseline of recovery, my resting heart rate, my HRV, Whoop's recovery score. It would take almost a week. But most importantly, outside of those numbers, I would feel so much self-doubt. I would feel anxiety, like I'm trying to launch this business, I'm working on this business, and I'd wake up, Monday would come around, I'm like, fuck that, I don't wanna work on this. It'd be a few days of just like, it's not gonna work, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden, Thursday, Friday would come around and I'd be back. And it took me, and it sounds crazy, but it took me almost 2 years to realize that it was alcohol that was doing this to me. And I just made a decision. I was like, I'm so clear on the type of life I want to create. And I had a bigger, more like well-rounded picture of the pros and cons of it. Obviously it's fun, had a ton of fun with it. But I'm like, but the cons are really, really starting to outweigh the pros heavily, especially as I'm going into, trying to support myself financially with my own business, etc. So I just decided to cut it out. And a big thing that I've learned, I've talked with a lot of people now who have done the same. And this is something that just stood out to me so much. 100% of people that I've spoken to that don't drink alcohol anymore, these are all people that used to drink, a lot or often. 100% of them say life is so much better without it. I don't know if that would have resonated with me a few years ago when I was still drinking, but that is something that still just, blows my mind. There's something there. Number 4, keeping a consistent sleep schedule. I think that this is one of the most underappreciated areas of mental and physical health that I see, especially with guys that I work with. There's like this, almost like a badge of honor for not needing to sleep. There's a little bit of that. I think some people also are just so used to getting little amounts of sleep, 5, 6 hours, 4 hours even, that it's just normal. They don't know any different. But when I was really, I mentioned I hadn't slept through the night for 9 years. I was a middle of the night insomniac. I just was feeling groggy all the time. And it just wasn't super fun. So I started to research just little things. Hey, how can I improve my sleep here and there? Obviously, things like alcohol made a massive difference because you can't drop into deep restorative sleep with alcohol in your system. So cutting that out helped a ton. But the biggest thing was a consistent sleep schedule. I made a decision to go to bed at the same time every single day, 7 days a week. Of course, I used to go out, on weekends and meet up with friends. So I used to 5 days a week, same time. I got pretty good at that. But then on the weekends, I would stay up later. And what I realized is the most important sleep cycle is the very first one that we have. It's about a 90-minute sleep cycle. Okay. But here's the key. It doesn't start when we go to sleep. It starts around the same time every day because our body is working off of a 24-hour clock, our circadian rhythm. And so that sleep cycle wants to start at the same time every day. So when we cut into that by staying up later, we miss the most important sleep cycle that we have. I'm oversimplifying it, but that to me was one of the biggest things. I was like, okay, let me try and tap more into that. Let me create some consistency. Let me, be mindful of my environment and stimulation and lights and sounds and the temperature of the room. But number 1 was same time every single day. And what that started to do, it had a huge trickle down effect. And one of the biggest things was it was way easier to get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I started to just be more and more refreshed. I started to wake up without an alarm almost every single day. And it was incredible. Okay, so let's go into the last one, number 5. This last habit surprised me the most of all 5. And it is eating a clean diet of whole foods. And at the time, when I started researching this stuff, no one was talking about the impact of diet on mental well-being. At least I didn't come across it for a long time. But by cutting out things like artificial sweeteners, vegetable oils, seed oils, processed food, preservatives, things with food coloring, added sugar, just sugar in general outside of, naturally occurring in like fruits and stuff, I really experienced a big shift. I started focusing on elevating or increasing my protein. So I was eating about 1 gram of protein per 1 pound of body weight. I'm about 190 pounds, 190 grams of protein, roughly, give or take. So exact science, 190 pounds. That made a huge difference. The second one that I actually learned from Marcus Filly is to eat single ingredient foods. And what I learned from him was to make plates with 5 ingredients or less. And that just really simplified it for me. That gave me such a clear framework. I'm like, cool, okay, I can get a protein, I can get a veggie, and maybe I have some olive oil in there, maybe I have some fruits, maybe potentially a grain, depending on, where I'm at in my day, maybe something fermented to help with the gut. So it just kept it really, really simple. And I've never been one to, be so strict with a diet. I tried a bunch throughout the years, but there's not been really one that stuck with me because they all felt really restrictive. What has helped most is doing 2 things: sticking to single ingredient, nutrient dense whole foods. I mean foods that are like, the foods are the ingredients. You're not having to check the ingredient list. It's like chicken is chicken, cabbage is cabbage, an apple is an apple. Okay, there's not like a whole ingredient list. Second part was just paying attention to what foods made me feel my best. Mentally, physically, were there foods that caused me to bloat a little bit? Were there foods that, maybe didn't treat me well coming out the back? Were there things that caused a little bit of inflammation? So I just started being mindful of that, taking notes on that, and ultimately just creating somewhat of a framework that just allowed me to feel my best consistently. And the impact it had was, I started to put on muscle, started to lose some weight, of course. I just started to have more mental clarity consistently, which I thought was so interesting. So some of the things that I personally noticed, I ended up losing 20 pounds without ever counting calories in the beginning. I stopped overeating a lot and having just no random food cravings. I used to binge eat a lot. And when I switched to this, that completely stopped. I had way less inflammation in the morning, right? I used to notice when I would move my hands like this, it would just feel really swollen, or my joints would ache and, make different noises as I stood up and got throughout the day. It improved my sleep. And big thing was I stopped having midday energy crashes. I had less injuries while training. And then when I started training jujitsu, same thing happened. My body was breaking down less, and ultimately just had way more mental clarity and was in a better mood. So let's recap the 5 habits really quick. Morning cold exposure, cold shower, cold plunge, go for at least 30 seconds, focus on your breathing. Second one is strength training. So getting under some weight. And the key here is to follow a program. Follow a program so it takes the mental load out of it. You can just show up and go. You can look at what your assigned workout is for the day, and you can just go. You can go execute it. And by tracking, you'll feel a sense of progress. Third one is cutting out alcohol. I know this is difficult, maybe the hardest for a lot of people, but I have to have it on the list because it's by far the number one thing that I've done for my health, my physical, mental health, my business, my relationships. Life is so night and day without it. I know for some people, they can manage and they're totally fine with it. If you're on the fence with it, if you even have thoughts or questioning, hey, maybe I want to try without it, you don't have to quit forever. Just give yourself a month or 2 or 3 without it, just to see. It's worth testing out. You can always go back to it, okay? Number 4 is a consistent sleep schedule, 7 days a week. A little bonus tip for you too is leading up to bedtime, go no screens for 60 minutes. That's gonna help so much with just mental clarity, getting away from the cheap dopamine hits, whether you're watching news, Netflix, or scrolling on your phone, do that. I know this is kind of a bonus one, but will help so much with sleep as well. And then the 5th one is eating a clean diet of single ingredient whole foods. Remember, these are the fundamentals designed to get your physical state in a much more optimal state so you can feel better mentally, so you can do the work more effectively on your mental well-being, your emotional well-being. Again, work with a professional on that. This is the fundamental core of, I would say, behaviors or habits that you should really be focusing on and implementing if you want to support this other side of your life. Practice these, it'll completely change your life. And if there was anything in this that really resonated and really helped you, comment, let me know, reach out, I'll respond. Share with somebody who could benefit from this. And remember, Perfect Morning Routine's in the description. Grab that, straightforward. You can get started tomorrow.